we can accommodate 620 team members' uniform.
We have to paint the rooms every 3 weeks.
We are providing a service to some of the most demanding customers you can get.
Amazing hotels, live beyond the lobby. Monday the 27th of March on BBC Two.
Good job, guys. We totally nailed it. This year, fundraising kits are going to be sent through the post. I love it. Letterboxes are back.
Now on BBC One, the BBC News at 1 with Sophie Rayworth.
The Prime Minister says no to a referendum on Scottish independence before the Brexit deal is done. Theresa May says now is not the time, and holding a second referendum before a deal would be unfair on the Scottish people.
I say now is not the time, and the reason I say that is because all our energies should be being put into the negotiations with the European Union to make sure that we get the right deal.
It comes as Scotland's First Minister warned Westminster not to block a second referendum, also this lunchtime. The Conservative Party has been fined £70,000 for breaking election expenses rules. They say it was an administrative error. A terror alert in France as a number of people are injured in a shooting at a high school in the south of France. Japanese car maker Toyota is to invest almost £250 million in its UK operations. And the Dutch government sees off the challenge from an anti-immigration party, calling it a defeat for the wrong kind of populism. CCTV footage emerges of the final movements of an Irish woman murdered in the Indian state of Goa as a man's arrested.
Later on, BBC London claims that noise from the night tube is making Londoners' lives a misery. And preparing for his final fight, we meet the East Londoner known as a pioneer of mixed martial arts.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Theresa May has said there should be no referendum on Scottish independence until after a Brexit deal is done. In an interview a short time ago, she said now is not the time, as the government will be concentrating on negotiating the best deal for the whole of the UK as it leaves the European Union. But Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has challenged the Westminster government to respect the will of the Scottish Parliament if it votes next week for a new referendum. Well, let's get the latest now from our Scotland correspondent, Lorna Gordon. Lorna.
Yes, Sophie, you know, a week is a long time in politics, and I think that is especially true when it comes to Scotland's constitutional debate. Remember, it was just Monday, just 3 days ago, that Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister, stood up in the First Minister's official residence, Bute House, saying she would seek the right to hold a second referendum on Scottish independence. She laid out her preferred timing for that, saying she wanted it between autumn 2018 and spring 2019. Now, just in the last hour or so, Theresa May, the Prime Minister, has rejected emphatically the timings of her demand.
When the SNP government say that it's the time to start talking about a second independence referendum, I say that just at this point, all our energies should be focused on our negotiations with the European Union about our future relationship, and to be talking about an independence referendum would, I think, make it more difficult for us to be able to get the right deal for Scotland and the right deal for the UK. And more than that, I think it wouldn't be fair to the people of Scotland, because they'd be being asked to make a crucial decision without the necessary information, without knowing what the future partnership will be or what the alternative of an independent Scotland would look like. So I think just now we should be putting all our energies into ensuring that we get that right deal for the UK and the right deal for Scotland in our negotiations with the European Union. That's my job as Prime Minister. Right now, we should be working together, not pulling apart. We should be working together to get that right deal for Scotland, that right deal for the UK. So I say that's my job as Prime Minister. And so for that reason, I say to the SNP, now is not the time.
Well, here's the thing. The Constitution is reserved to Westminster. Nicola Sturgeon would have to seek what's called a Section 30 order giving her permission to hold a second referendum. She was responding to the wider arguments being made by the Unionist parties during First Minister's questions today, where she robustly defended her actions.
If on Wednesday next week this Parliament votes for an independence referendum to give the people of Scotland a choice over their own future, will the Conservatives respect the will of this Parliament, or are the Conservatives running scared?
Well, timing is everything. This debate between Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon started out, 9 months ago. It's quite a cordial relationship. I think it has now deteriorated significantly. Those two opposing sides in this debate further apart than ever. There will be a lot of anger in the pro-independence camp at those comments by Theresa May this morning. Nicola Sturgeon not yet had a chance to respond, but one prominent SNP MSP has tweeted that her comments are a slap in the face for democracy. Expects much more comment and reaction as the afternoon goes on.
Indeed. Lorna in Glasgow, thank you. Let's go to Westminster now and our assistant political editor, Norman Smith. We should be working together, says the Prime Minister, but right now we have Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon at loggerheads.
Sophie, be in no doubt, this is a very carefully calibrated intervention by Theresa May, designed as, yes, a deliberate rebuff to Nicola Sturgeon, but not as a rebuff to the Scottish people. Theresa May saying now may not be the time for a referendum, but absolutely not ruling it out in the future. In other words, rejecting Nicola Sturgeon's timetable for a referendum, but not quashing maybe the hopes of the Scottish people that sometime they might have a vote. Indeed, going out of her way to stress how she will now try and secure the best Brexit deal, not just for the UK, but also for Scotland, stressing our shared history of the past 300 years, how we have fought wars together. And my sense is she was almost trying to reach over the head of Scotland's First Minister to address the people of Scotland directly, to ensure that they themselves did not feel that somehow they had been rejected and therefore that might inflame nationalist sentiment in Scotland. Because there is a calculation in Downing Street that perhaps Nicola Sturgeon has miscalculated. Perhaps people are weary of the uncertainty, the constitutional question. They want the Scottish Government to get on with its domestic agenda. But yes, you're right, this is becoming personal. You sense these are two leaders who are no longer communicating with each other, but are confronting each other.
Norman Smith in Westminster, thank you. The Conservative Party has been fined a record £70,000 for breaking spending rules during the 2015 general election and 3 by-elections in 2014. The Electoral Commission said there have been significant failures in the reporting of expenses and referred the case to the Metropolitan Police. The Electoral Commission also said there was a realistic prospect that the money had given the party an advantage. Our political correspondent Vicky Young reports.
May 2015, the general election result was too close to call and the Conservative Party was pulling out all the stops.
I'm on the bus.
I'm on the bus.
This was their battle bus, which toured Britain, targeting constituencies where the fight was fiercest. But the Tories have run into trouble for breaking the rules on recording election expenses.
£70,000 is the highest fine that we've ever issued, and that represents offences and contraventions across 5 different areas. So we've never issued findings to that extent before, and I think they are some of the worst in the fact that they were unable to provide evidence when we needed it, and the reports were inaccurate, and the spending returns did not contain things that they should have done.
The Electoral Commission's report is damning. It found numerous failures by a large, well-resourced and experienced party and concludes that this undermines voters' confidence in democratic processes. There was a realistic prospect that the Conservative Party gained a financial advantage over opponents.
Craig McKinley, 18,838.
The Commission investigated seats including South Thanet, where the Tories narrowly beat former UKIP leader Nigel Farage. The allegations, first raised by Channel 4, centre on whether the battle bus tour and other expenses should have counted towards the individual candidate's spending limit rather than putting them into the national accounts.
This record fine is not the end of the matter for the Conservatives. The Electoral Commission says its job is to look at accounting accuracy. It can't decide whether the party deliberately intended to make a false declaration. That's the job of the police, and 12 forces have already sent files to the Crown Prosecution Service.
Conservatives say the party regrets its reporting error and will pay the fine.
All three political parties have been found to have accounting systems which were not 100%
No one got close
accurate.
to your fine.
The inaccuracies appear to have not only been in the general election but 3 by-elections, so it's a larger fine.
Yes.
Actually, all parties should obviously have accounting systems which are perfect.
Senior Tories think in most cases it's unlikely that the mistakes will lead to prosecutions, but there could be serious political problems ahead, including election reruns in some areas. Vicky Young, BBC News, Westminster.
At least 2 people have been injured in a shooting at a school in the south of France this morning. Police say 1 person was arrested. They issued a terror alert and told people in Grasse to stay in their homes. Lucy Williamson is in Paris and has the latest for us. What more do we know, Lucy?
Well, the evacuation of the school largely seems to be over, and we're told that all the pupils walked out of the school with their hands held up in the air because they've been taught to do exactly that after any kind of attack in the school. That enables the teachers to search them, to account for them. It gives you some idea of just how nervous France is about its schools and the security of its schools following that spate of terrorist attacks here over the past 2 years. Having said that, in this instance, the initial indications are that it may not be a terrorist attack. There's been 1 man arrested, and early reports say that he may be a 17-year-old student, not known to police, but he may have been a student at the school. And just talking to police as we've been over the past hour or so, they say that the headmaster of the school was the person targeted, and he's one of the injured parties.
Lucy Williamson in Paris, thank you. The Japanese car maker Toyota is to invest almost £250 million in its UK operations. The company says it will use the money to modernise its Burnaston plant near Derby and to make improvements to its supply chain. This report by our industry correspondent John Moylan.
Toyota has been making cars near Derby for almost 25 years. Now that looks set to continue. At a time of huge uncertainty in the industry, the Japanese car maker is pumping almost £250 million into its UK operations.
We are determined to be competitive. That means building cars with quality, high productivity, low cost, and this investment helps us hugely to be competitive for the long term. So we think this is a huge part of preparing for the long-term future.
Toyota will invest £240 million to upgrade the Burnaston plant. There's £21.3 million from government towards skills and research and development. It's all good news for the 2,500 workers at the site. There's no word today on whether all of this guarantees that there will be new cars built in this plant in the future. But this is a really significant investment, and car makers do not put almost £250 million into a plant if they don't believe it has a future. Burnaston was Toyota's first vehicle plant in Europe. Since the first car rolled off the production line back in 1992, they've built more than 4 million vehicles here. 4 out of 5 are exported around the world. The new investment should see that continue. But with Brexit coming, car makers face the prospect of tariffs when importing from or exporting to Europe. So did the business secretary, who visited the plant today, give Toyota any special guarantees about the future?
The investment that has been made is a reflection of the confidence that the company has in the efficiency and the success of this plant.
Last year, amid the uncertainty around the Brexit vote, investment in the UK car industry fell. So Toyota's decision will be seen as a vote of confidence in a sector which is facing challenges ahead. John Moylan, BBC News, Derbyshire.
CCTV footage has emerged of the final movements of an Irish woman who was murdered earlier this week in the southern Indian state of Goa. Danielle McLaughlin lived in Liverpool and was travelling on a British passport. Her body was found in a field close to a tourist resort. A man has been arrested. Our correspondent, Yugita Limai, is there for us now.
Well, Sophie, police here in Goa suddenly believe that they have cracked this case. The investigating officer that I've been speaking to has told me that he believes they have found the main culprit. They arrested him on Tuesday. He was presented in court on Wednesday. And from the questioning, they have found a lot of evidence. They are still checking to see whether he was acting on his own or whether there were others who were a part of it. They have also been collecting evidence from the spot where Danielle's body was found on Tuesday morning.
Tributes being paid to Danielle McLaughlin, who was found dead here on Tuesday morning.
Oh, sweetheart.
Police say she had injuries on the face and head. The 28-year-old Irish woman had travelled to India on a British passport. She was on holiday in Goa. Police believe the man with her in this CCTV footage is responsible for her murder. They've arrested him and say they have compelling evidence.
When we questioned him, the accused confessed to the crime. After that, we also found a two-wheeled vehicle with bloodstains on it. We have collected a lot of forensic evidence.
Police are still waiting for the results of a post-mortem examination, but they suspect Danielle might have been sexually assaulted before she was killed. It's brought back memories of Scarlett Keeling. The 15-year-old British girl was raped and murdered in Goa in 2008. Last year, 2 men accused of her killing were acquitted.
This is a state that's known all over the world for its beaches and parties. Foreign and Indian tourists come here in throngs, sometimes for weeks or months, year after year, to enjoy the sun. This time, for many, the peace has been broken.
Women's safety in Goa is once again in the spotlight. Some are still trying to come to terms with what's happened.
Shocked. It's just... The whole community is just in disbelief.
For this state, though, it'll be important to show that justice will be done, that those who killed Danielle won't walk away free.
They will continue questioning this man until the 21st of March. There is a lot of pressure on Goa police to build a watertight case, because it's not just about catching a man who they believe is the main culprit, but it's about being able to have all of the evidence to back it up in court, especially after the Scarlett Keeling case, where the 2 people accused of killing her were acquitted last year.
Yogita, thank you. The time is just after 1:15. Our top story this lunchtime. The Prime Minister says no to a referendum on Scottish independence before the Brexit deal is done. She said the focus of the entire UK should now be on the negotiations to leave the European Union. And still to come, it's School Report Day across the BBC, with hundreds of schools taking part, and the focus this year is on mental health matters.
Later on BBC London, towering over Trafalgar Square, the giant puppet helping launch St Patrick's Day celebrations in the capital. And it's cooler and cloudier today. We'll have a full forecast for you. That's all coming up in just a few minutes.
President Trump has suffered another setback in his attempts to stop people from 6 mainly Muslim countries entering the US, with federal courts blocking his latest attempt at a travel ban just hours before it was due to come into force. A judge in Hawaii ruled that the ban would stigmatize Muslim Americans. The president has hit back, accusing the court of unprecedented overreach, and has pledged to appeal against the order, as Richard Lister reports.
Donald Trump was reliving the glory days of the campaign trail last night at a rally in Nashville. These people support him partly because of his promise to keep foreign Muslims out of America. But it's a promise that's proving hard to keep.
The protection of the nation.
His first travel ban denied entry to all refugees and anyone from 7 mainly Muslim countries. When the courts blocked it, he signed a second, more limited ban to come into force today. But 2 judges have now struck it down. The first was in Hawaii. The state argued the ban discriminated against Muslims and was bad for the economy.
Any sort of discrimination that occurs that's unconstitutional or illegal, if it results in any harm to our state, then we're going to fight it. And I think that's the point.
The president's first short-lived travel ban caused chaos, stranding scores of travellers, splitting immigrant families and challenging America's image of itself. The slapdown of his second attempt is more ammunition for his critics. Senator Elizabeth Warren tweeted, "Your Muslim ban is now 0 for 2 versus the Constitution. Stop fighting the rule of law and start fighting for all Americans." But the president's tactic seems to be fight the court.
This is, in the opinion of many, an unprecedented judicial overreach. You don't think this was done by a judge for political reasons, do you? No. This ruling makes us look weak.
But the battle isn't over. He said he'll take it to the Supreme Court. The president's defeats meant this Iraqi family could reunite in California yesterday. But no one yet knows which version of America will ultimately prevail. Richard Lister, BBC News.
The former England footballer Adam Johnson has lost his latest challenge against his conviction for sexual activity with a 15-year-old fan. The Court of Appeal rejected his bid to hear the case and upheld his 6-year prison sentence. Johnson admits kissing the girl and meeting her with intent after grooming her, but denies any further sexual activity. The cost of an NHS prescription in England will rise by 20 pence to £8.60 from the 1st of April. The government said the increase was broadly in line with inflation because the cost of prepayment certificates is being held at its current level. Those who benefit from existing prescription charge exemptions will be unaffected by the rise. Now, it was seen as a test of support for nationalist parties that have been gaining ground across Europe. So the Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, is celebrating his victory in the general election by declaring that the Netherlands has rejected the wrong kind of populism. His party comprehensively defeated that of Geert Wilders and his anti-immigration Freedom Party. Our correspondent Damien Grammaticus is in The Hague for us now. Damien.
Sophie, yes, in this election more than 24 parties were standing, but Dutch voters had been told they boiled down to a simple question. Would they put an insurgent far-right leader in a position where he could unseat a sitting prime minister in Europe? A large number came out to vote, more than 80%, and they delivered a pretty clear verdict.
Making a late-night entry to his victory party, the Dutch Prime Minister. He's that rare thing in Western politics right now, a centrist pro-EU leader who's just held on to power, bucking the populist trend.
Nederland, na Brexit.
Mark Rutte said Holland, after Brexit and the American elections, has said stop to the wrong sort of populism. Mr. Rutte's Liberal Party lost seats but is still the largest, seeing off the far-right challenge. So no celebrations for the anti-EU, anti-immigrant Geert Wilders. He gained a few seats and finished second, but fell far below expectations. Of course I wanted to be the biggest party, but we didn't lose. We gained seats, Mr. Wilders said. The main gains, though, went elsewhere, to mainstream parties, and biggest of all, to this man, the leader of the Green Left, Jesse Klaver. He's pro-EU, pro-immigrant. Today he was basking in the best ever result for the Greens.
I think that there's a majority in the Netherlands, a silent majority, who wants idealism in politics and who are actually pro-European or pro-refugee. So I think this should be the course for the Netherlands for the next years.
So at Parliament, flowers for the winners today, but none for the left-wing Labour Party, almost wiped out. Their leader had a warning.
Populism is not over, and the anger which is below the surface and which is causing this extreme election result is not over. And you see it not only in Wilders' vote, but huge fragmentation, new parties, a lot of anger there.
Anger maybe, but some are hopeful too, that this result could, perhaps, mark a turning of the tide in Western politics.
And from around Europe, from other capitals, prime ministers and presidents, there have been letters of congratulation to the prime minister here today. A little relieved they may be, perhaps, but the question now will be, does this result blunt that populist trend? It's a question for next month in France. Sophie.
Damien, thank you. Renewable energy sources like wind and solar power do add to our household bills. But a new report says what a lot of people don't realise is that government policies that mean household appliances like fridges and freezers and light bulbs are now more efficient have also led to energy consumption in people's homes being reduced. So the overall effect is that bills are actually going down. Our environment analyst, Roger Harrobin, is here. It all sounds rather counterintuitive.
Well, I mean, it is a bit counterintuitive, Sophie. You've got these two factors. One is that renewable energy costs more than traditional forms of energy that we've been using, and so that is adding to bills. But then you've got this other force, which we don't hear about, which is that government and the EU have been consistently ratcheting up standards, so every appliance you buy is now much more efficient than an appliance you would have bought 10 or 15 years ago. You don't notice because you're just swapping your old appliance for your new one. So there's this kind of stealth policy that we're all saving energy use. At the same time, that bills are being forced down because the downward pressure of the regulations is outweighing the extra cost of the renewable energy. So as you say, bills are actually going down. Average bills are going down.
And briefly, the future?
Briefly, the future, the committee who wrote this, Committee of Government Advisors, say they think the trends can continue. We can continue innovating. There'll be a revolution in LED bulbs and we'll be quids in.
Roger, thank you. Now, what a weekend ahead for England rugby. The team will soon be heading to Dublin, where they'll take on Ireland in the Six Nations Showdown. If they win, they'll not only complete back-to-back Six Nations Grand Slams, but they'll also be setting a new record. Our sports correspondent Natalie Perks is at their Surrey training ground. Natalie.
Well, Sophie, you'd have thought that after thrashing Scotland, they could kick back, relax and bask in the glory of being Six Nations champions once more. No chance with Eddie Jones at the helm. Under the Australian coach, he is on a long-term project, really, for England to achieve greatness. Only when they have overhauled New Zealand as the world #1 side in the world could they truly call themselves great, and we're some way off that happening. In the meantime, there's the not so small matter of facing Ireland in Dublin on Saturday, and they're going for back-to-back Grand Slams, a feat that's only achieved once every 27 years or so, and they could set the world record for 19 consecutive wins, something not even the mighty All Blacks have achieved. So they're treating this match like a World Cup final. England standing on the cusp of something very, very special, but complacency is the word of the day today for Eddie Jones.
We talk about it all the time. We're consistently looking out for small things that lead to complacency, but it's always around the corner. You know, it's always lurking in the shadows. We train hard, we make sure we prepare well, and that's all you can do. You can just focus on the next game and try to prepare as well as you can, and we've done that. But it can always jump out of the corner.
Well, Eddie Jones said that England have to be emotionally, physically and mentally prepared against Ireland. He said that yet, just now, they don't have enough leaders in the side to potentially go on and win a World Cup. Of course, that is 2 years away. This is still very much a work in progress, and a fascinating one at that, Sophie.
Natalie, thank you. Now, more and more children between the ages of 11 and 16 struggle with feeling unhappy, self-conscious and frightened, but many don't ask for help. That's the finding from a special survey carried out as part of the BBC's annual school report. Bryony Mackenzie caught up with Jordan Stevens from the band Rizzle Kicks, who started his own social media campaign to get young people talking openly about mental health.
He found fame with the hip-hop duo Rizzle Kicks. Now Jordan's being asked tough questions by school reporters about the tough times in his life.
Hi Jordan, I'm Maddie.
Hi.
Have you or someone close to you experienced either mental health issues or the stigma attached to them? If so, how did it affect you?
In school, during my GCSEs, I got diagnosed with ADHD. I was called I'm the hyper kid, or I got told to calm down all the time, and it's like the most infuriating sentence for someone who can't calm down. I am whole.
I am whole.
I am whole.
Jordan began his own social media campaign to get young people talking openly about mental health.
I am whole. Becoming famous gives you all this kind of stuff, you know, and I was able to afford a flat and these kind of things that people are like working day in, day out to try and get. But the reality is that doesn't really compensate for any kind of emotional stability. In fact, it can often contribute to quite a poor emotional stability.
According to a school report survey, half of all pupils admit to having negative feelings but don't ask for help.
Being in year 9, sort of changing as a person, it was like a way to control change, and it was something that I had control over.
Florence developed anorexia when she was 14.
The reason I didn't come out and say what I'd been through and what had happened was because people didn't understand where I was coming from, and you know, it took a lot of guts for me to say, you know, look, I have a problem. And also I was in denial because I was embarrassed and I thought that it wasn't normal and it wasn't something that was okay.
Jordan wants his message to reach primary age children.
To just remove the idea that it's kind of like some taboo to be open about how you feel and your mentality is like quite important.
Giving help to those who need it even earlier. Bryony McKenzie, BBC News.
And for more on some of the stories covered by pupils in School Report today and a map showing which schools are taking part, do go to bbc.co.uk/school report. Right now, Darren Bett has all the weather for us. Hi.
Hello, Sophie. We got top marks for the weather yesterday. Not doing quite so well today. More of a B- sort of day. The sunshine is much more limited out there. Kent's been doing nicely so far. Blue skies here. But look at the difference as we head into the Midlands. This was a little earlier on today in Warwick. Almost featureless skies. Very white, very grey out there. And quite a difference in temperature too. Put them on the map. You can see what I mean. You can see the extent of the cloud that we've got there. Best of the breaks across more eastern parts of England. And some changes coming into the northwest, where we're seeing rain moving southwards across Scotland, Northern Ireland, moving into northern England and North Wales. And behind that, we've still got a strong wind, even gales for